Hi, students. Today we're going to talk about the first half of our lecture on Stoicism. So for this one, I want you to do me a favor and download the Enchiridion by Epictetus. This is what we're going to use to guide our thoughts throughout this part of the lecture. So our objectives, for this part, we're going to be explaining and assessing Stoics on human nature and interpersonal moral duties. And I want you to be also able to explain major Stoic principles, virtues, and exercises, and describe and assess Epictetus's Enchiridion. On the second half, I'm going to have you explain and assess Seneca and Aristotle on anger. We're also going to look at Marcus Aurelius briefly, and we're going to be able to think basically about the later Stoics and the way they conceptualized. So we're going to start with our own action philosopher, James Stockdale. And I want to talk about what happened to him in 1965 when he was a test pilot in Vietnam. There's this moment in his mind that he describes in his autobiography in which he realizes how incredibly important philosophy is in the real world, in the worst of circumstances. So many people might think of philosophy as being sort of something that you can do in your leisure time, which I'm not even saying it's not, okay? But this ethical theory, Stockdale feels is so important and crucial that he thought about this in moments before he may have died. Okay, but he didn't die. He got captured, and he was held prisoner in a prisoner of war in a POW camp for over 5 years. So why would a soldier study Epictetus? Well, Stoicism is, quote, about things that will do you good if your child dies, or your brother dies, or if you must die, or be tortured. Here you practice how to die, how to be enchained, how to be wrecked, how to be exiled. So here he is getting captured by the enemy. He lived from 1923 into the 2000s. He was born in Abington, Illinois, and he is a warrior scholar. So he is both a decorated and honored fighter pilot, as well as a scholar and an inventor of many things as well, in particular torture subversion methods, which he taught to the military later in life. He figured out ways to be able to keep your mind safe while your body is undergoing tremendous pain, isolation, stress, torture. He's lawful good for his alignment. And so I want to describe what happened to him in the POW camp as briefly as I can. So he's the most decorated, he's the highest ranking, I believe he's the highest ranking pilot there. And so he considers it his duty immediately to be a leader at the camp. And he's read the Enchiridion, and he's going to use these methods of thinking to divorce the way he is as a human, himself, from the terrible circumstances he's in. There's something called the Stockdale Paradox. And this is describing something that seems paradoxical on the surface of it. If we look at the two different types of people who come into a POW camp, you might think of the people as optimists and pessimists. So optimists believe, oh, well, we're going to get rescued any day. They're very hopeful. They believe that everything's going to be okay and going to be good and going to resolve itself quickly. The pessimist, on the other hand, bound by the nature of the circumstances, thinks about the worst scenario as possible, conceptualizes what is most likely to happen, not what they'd like to have happen, and lives within that sort of less positive view. So you might look at these two groups of people and think, well, the optimists are likely to survive the longest, because they love life and they have hope. But the paradoxical thing is, no, actually, they're the ones most likely to die. The ones most likely to survive the longest are the ones with that, with the feet buried in the mud, with both a pragmatic outlook and some pessimistic predictions as well, so that they don't think it's all going to be rosy and happy immediately, because it won't necessarily. So he one of the quotes that I think best explains who he is as a person is when he said, "When instincts and rank are out of phase, take the guy with the instincts." He also helped invent with other people ways to communicate in prison, so that they could talk to each other and make sure that they covered each other. So, Stoic party traits. Again, we're going to conceptualize all the philosophers, or many of the philosophers, as characters in a role-playing game. And so, when there's Stoics in the party, their ultimate goal is inner peace. Okay, so what do I mean by that? They aren't looking to live a happy, honored, deeply pleasurable life. What they find pleasurable is inner mastery and inner peace, having tranquility in their heart, neither wanting nor striving, but living with peace of mind. They also want rational happiness through eudaimonia. The powers that Stockdale exhibited in the prison and that Stoics in general focus on are emotional resilience, rational detachment, and self-mastery. When he was being tortured, he realized that the key to breaking a man's will is making him feel ashamed of himself. And if you can just stop submitting to that cycle of shaming, if you just don't allow the shame to occur for things that are outside of one's control, okay, then one retains the tranquility and the inner peace, even when you are being tortured. And Stockdale was tortured. He was crippled for the rest of his life from some of the things that he had to endure. So his core mechanic is this self-check of control versus not control. Okay, so if he can control it, then he should pay attention and focus and try to achieve stuff. If he cannot control it, he has to let it go. So he's we'll give him for his stats, and I think this is the first philosopher we can really give some strength stats to. So +2 for strength, +3 leadership, +3 courage. The Stockdale Paradox is the paradox of the pessimist versus the optimist. He was a Medal of Honor winner, ran for vice president, was a statesman, and lived his life after his years of service as in the college community as an academic. Now, here is Epictetus. Here is Stockdale's inspiration and the writer of the Enchiridion. So he lived from 55 to 135, Common Era. His hometown is Hierapolis, Turkey, where he was born into slavery in the Roman Empire. We'll classify him as a teacher monk, and his alignment is lawful good. Let me explain a little bit about his life so that you can just picture this. So he's born into slavery, and he ends up being enslaved by a pretty famous person. Okay, and he's living in Rome, and he's working. He's enslaved by this guy, and the guy, for some reason, and this may be true, maybe not so true. We do know that Epictetus was crippled for most of his life, but this is the story of how he got crippled. So the guy who owned him grabbed his leg and started twisting it, trying to get some begging or some emotion out of Epictetus, and he kept twisting it until it broke. So his leg broke. Epictetus's leg broke before his will broke. And that's how he was crippled for the rest of his life. So much like many of the philosophers you'll find, being a philosopher was a criminal in nature, a subversive in introducing dissonant ideas. So he was accused of being a philosopher and was exiled later in life. He died in exile, and he was very well known for being an amazing friend. Even though he never gained any money or anything, he absolutely lived a simple, tranquil life surrounded by friends and loved ones. His motto, look not for any greater harm than this, destroying the trustworthy, self-respecting, well-behaved man within you. So we'll give him -2 on wealth. This picture behind him is of the ruins in Turkey of his hometown. Friendliness, we'll give him +3. He was a beloved teacher and friend. Perseverance, +3. And inner tranquility, +4. So I'm starting with Epictetus, but the Stoics start much earlier with Zeno, Cleanthes, and Chrysippus. We're not going to spend a lot of time with the Greek Stoics, but I just want to point out where the word Stoic comes from. It comes from the word stoa poikale, which means painted porch. And we can see a porch in modern Agra here. And that's what the Stoic poikale looked like. And it was located near there. I believe that there's a subway station going through it right now in Athens. So it begins in Athens, and these guys have some major ideas in common for their ethical theory. Hold on one second. I'm sorry, this should be Barking Dog Studios here. And I get mixed up on hitting the thing to turn it off, so I apologize about that breakup in the middle. And I apologize if my dog Ushi starts barking again in a second. She does not realize the importance of what I am doing. Okay, so here we go. The first major conclusion that the Stoics come up with, so what underlies their ethical theory, is a concept of cosmopolitanism. Cosmo meaning universe, politanism like polis, like polis, like political. So we are citizens of the universe instead of citizens of, say, Athens or Hierapolis or Stagira. So every human is a citizen of the universe. Because of this, instead of conceptualizing the world as Athenians and Spartans and Macedonians, et cetera, they conceptualize all humans as having equal moral standing because we share one thing, which is reason, the light of reason. Okay, and the light of reason gives us shared morality. So humans have equal moral standing regardless of society. Everyone is brothers to everyone else. This common thread of reasoning and the virtue that results from it is what is truly valuable in the world. So the foundations of virtue for the Stoics is interpersonal duties. I'm actually going to read a little bit from the Epictetus for this one. This is number 30 of the Enchiridion. Duties are universally measured by relations. Is anyone a father? If so, it is implied that the children should take care of him, submit to him in everything, patiently listen to his reproaches, his correction. But he is a bad father. Are you naturally entitled then to a good father? No, only to a father. Is a brother unjust? Well, keep your own situation towards him. Consider not what he does, but what you are to do to keep your own faculty of choice in a state conformable to nature. For another will not hurt you unless you please. You will then be hurt when you think you are hurt. In this manner, therefore, you will find from the idea of a neighbor, a citizen, a general, the corresponding duties if you accustom yourself to contemplate the several relations. So what Epictetus is saying here is that when you are trying to figure out what is moral to do, don't look at the other person's behavior to figure that out. Quote, befitting acts are all those which reason prevails with us to do. And this is the case with honoring one's parents, one's brothers, one's country. Okay, so as Epictetus suggests, instead of looking at what other people do, look within to find what it is one's interpersonal duties to do, and look at the social roles that you play importantly. Again, humans have the light of reason. Justice and goodness are discoverable to everyone equally because we all have this light of moral reasoning within us. We have a conscience, or the ability to have a conscience. So I want you to try practicing some of the Stoic exercises. Okay. So imagine you're like Zeno, you're crashed and you show up in a foreign place and you have no goods, you have nothing with you. So, or you can be like Marcus Aurelius, who during his youth would put on a scratchy coat and sleep on the floor to practice enduring hardships. Go camping. Try camping. It's almost inevitable that there will be hardships, and you'll get used to things that are less comfortable than the very, very comfortable existence we live in now. Practice gratitude. Wake up every day telling yourself, you're going to think about just how awesome it is. The world is the way it is and has already had millions and millions of man hours to create this wonderful thing that has roads, it has bridges, it has cars, it has TV, it has movies, it has everything that it has. Instead of thinking about how difficult it is and how troublesome and burdensome and obstacle-ridden our path is, practicing being thankful for all the people's work that surrounds you and that you can look forward to. Prepare your mind against hardships. Not only is it important to endure them, but to practice them ahead of time. So to conceptualize what might happen and be well aware of that always as you go through life, so that when that actually does happen, you have your plan B. You have a way of understanding it, and you aren't just swept away by the vicissitudes of life. So I have the shorter quote up here, but I'm going to read the little bit longer quote. And this is the beginning, the very first beginning. And honestly, if you just abide by this very first quote, you will achieve much of what the Stoics are really trying to get you to achieve. And this is going to be really hard because the goal here is mental tranquility. The goal isn't to get everything you want in life. It's to want everything you get in life. Okay. So some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion. In a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control, body, property, reputation, command. In one word, whatever are not our own actions. The things in our control are by nature free, unrestrained, unhindered. And those not in our control are weak, slavish, restrained, belonging to others. Remember then that if you suppose that things which are slavish by nature are also free, and what belongs to others is your own, then you will be hindered. You will lament, you will be disturbed, you will find fault. But if you suppose that only to be your own, which is your own, and what belongs to others, such as it really is, then no one will compel you or restrain you. Further, you will find fault with no one or accuse no one. You will do nothing against your will. No one will hurt you. You will have no enemies, and you will not be harmed. Wow, no enemies and not be harmed, and all I have to do is think better? Sign me up. Okay, so how does he mean that we will have no enemies and we will not be harmed? if you recognize what's within your grasp and what's within your control, and all that's in your control is how you control what you think and how you control what you behave, that's it, then anything that happens to you only happens to, for example, if you're being tortured, that's happening to your body, that's not happening to you. Okay? If somebody betrays you, that happens to them. Okay? The betrayal, okay, is the result of their behavior, not on you. So the only thing you can control is the way you react to a betrayal or the way you react to being tortured. Okay? And so you have to cultivate the way that you react to things. And that's the key to Stoic wisdom. So again, I do want you ideally to read the entire Enchiridion, and then think about each of these. Give them time. Let them sit within you for a little bit. The thing I want to talk about for a little bit is the Stoic analysis of emotion. This is so different for many people than the way that they think about emotion. And I hope this helps you cogitate on the ideas of the Enchiridion a little bit better if I explain how emotion arises according to the Stoics, okay? So basically what happens is you're out in the natural world, okay, and something happens and you receive an impression of that, meaning you perceive something occurs. Say you see something and it looks like I don't know, like looks like a kid hits another kid with a book. Okay, what you have seen is what looks like that interaction, and then you conceive of what happened. Okay, you might think to yourself, man, that bigger kid hit that little kid with a book. Okay, so that's conceptualization. So you've perceived it, now you conceive it. Next, you might make a judgment. You might think, oh God, that's mean, or that's bad. And then that might fill you with a will or desire, like to go run over and impede the kid from hitting the other kid. When you form a will or desire from what you've judged to have happened, you've conceived what's happening and you judged it to be either good or bad, wrong or right, okay? When you form that will or desire, you're assenting to a judgment that the world should not be the way that it is. So when one reacts emotionally, you feel justified, but you haven't really reflected upon how the world is. And you try to conform the world to the will of yourself instead of conform your will to the way of the world. So, steps to be rational and attain mental tranquility. Instead of just responding and reacting and getting upset, you start to conceptualize the steps that are going into your own emotional reaction to become less reactive and to become more engaged in your own emotional behavior. Often, I mean, I want you to think about this. Often this just occurs and it's just quick. You see something happening and you think bad and you want to react and engage in the world. Okay. And I'm not saying that kid hitting another kid isn't bad. What I'm trying to do is get you to think about the actual steps that are required for you to conceptualize that action in a judgment. So let's just go through it. First, there's reality. Kids hit other kids with books. Okay, big kids pick on littler kids. That's reality. Okay, and people see things like that happen as well. So this is my very, very neutral description of reality. Then we perceive of things that are within our eye shot or earshot. Okay, and then we judge, and we don't judge actively. This occurs to us. We think bad. We think bad. We don't think this is bad because, or I am having a reaction of this to this because. We instead just have passive judgment. and these lead to emotional reactions. So instead, we want to change our mind from passive to active, from involuntarily receiving thoughts and getting a feeling and not recognizing that we're doing steps of judgment, to actively engaging in our judgment with active reflection. Okay. So how are we supposed to do this? Keep calm and carry on method. Well, let's adjust our mental representation to the way the world actually is. Is this situation about your own agency, your own action? If not, accept reality as it is and let go of the imagination that you hold of how you wish it could be. If it is about what we voluntarily accept mentally, then conform your mind to reality and wish that the world happens the way it does. Okay? Again, I'm not saying that the person shouldn't react and interfere and help the little kid from being beat up by the older kid, but I am saying they shouldn't be angry about it. Okay? First, being angry at a little kid for the way they behave is bad. Okay, because they don't have the level of control or adult understanding that we have. Okay, so we shouldn't be angry at a kid. Instead, we should hold that feeling of judgment and understand where that comes from. It's a wishing that kids didn't hit other kids, that big kids didn't pick on little kids. It's a wishing the world is different from the way the world is. To wish like that is to imagine a world that isn't the world it is. So instead, try to have your mind conform to practical standards instead, and enjoy the mental tranquility that results. Okay, and if you practice this daily, you keep yourself, when you find yourself reacting emotionally, especially deeply emotionally, to a simple, normal, everyday thing that is likely to occur and does occur, then ask yourself, how did I come to this judgment? Why do I want the world so badly to be a way it isn't? How can I find a way to make my mind conform to the world when the world can't conform to my mind? So practice these steps today of mental tranquility and acceptance. I want to finish this segment sticking with concepts of emotion to get you to really understand how different the way that the Stoics think about emotion is. So we're going to start with Zeno, and Zeno defines emotion as an irrational and unnatural movement in the soul. So let's start off with irrational. Okay, I'm going to give you a fable that's been told about the Stoics, especially Greek Stoics. So the Greek Stoics would come and they would watch the Olympic Games. And unlike all the other people in the Olympic game audience who are rooting for people, the Stoics are just sitting there, neither happy when their friends win, nor sad when their friends lose. Okay? So if you can imagine this utter rejection of the irrationality of rooting for people in a game. Okay. In a game, you should be happy the person who is the best wins. Okay, right? That would be rational behavior, but that's not how we root for teams or we root for people we care about. So if we can conceptualize for a moment, let's go with Zeno's like stronger idea. Grief, desire. There we go. Grief, desire, fear, and craving, pleasure. These are the most fundamental emotions, the most universal. So consider the following Stoic analysis of grief and desire and some of the particular types of these emotions, these subtypes of these major emotions, grief, desire, etc. Do you agree with the analysis or not? Okay, so I'm going to give you a chance to conceptualize emotions along with Zeno and argue about them or reflect upon them. So grief or pain is irrational mental confusion. Pity is grief felt at undeserved suffering. Envy is grief at others' prosperity. Jealousy is grief at the possession of another. Sorry, grief. Jealousy is grief at the possession by another of that which one desires for oneself. Distraction, irrational grief, rasping and hindering us from viewing the situation as a whole. Rivalry, pain at the possession by another of what one has oneself. Desire or craving is irrational appetency, including hatred. Hatred is a growing and lasting desire or craving that it could go ill with someone. Contentiousness is a craving or desire connected with partisanship. Anger, a craving or desire to punish one who is thought to have done you an undeserved injury. And finally, the passion of love is a craving from which good men are free, for it is an effort to win affection due to the visible presence of beauty. So we're going to stop there on our first lecture from the Stoicism module, and we'll come back and start the second part next.